Hello, I'm Malcolm.
And I'm Janice. Our special guest this week is Frank Sebastyan.
Next on Our Time. Hello.
Hi.
Do you know, one of the nicest things about doing this program for the last 9 years is that we've talked to over 1,000 people.
Is that right? That many?
More. I don't know how many more, but we've talked to more because we did the sums.
Quite a few.
But it's been the connection with people that in a lot of cases we grew up with, or we grew up watching on telly, or has had an effect on our lives. And hopefully you'd be interested to hear the effect that time has had on their lives. So our very special guest this week is...
Frank Sebastyan. Welcome to the program, Frank.
Thanks, Janice. Thanks, Malcolm.
It's great to see you again, Frank.
Terrific to see you both.
Because until we talked on the phone, I was thinking back when I would have seen you last, and it was probably 40 to 50 years ago, which is terrifying.
Isn't it just?
And here we live in the same city, and it's a very small one.
I thought I was older than everybody.
No, but you've done something that I've been talking about for some time, which is to write your life story, not necessarily for publication, but for the family.
Exactly.
Why did you do it, Frank?
It came about because one of the members in my band at the time, Rod Scott, he was a teacher, an arts teacher, and he told me that he was writing a book about his family because he'd done stuff that they didn't know about.
Yep.
And that inspired me to start doing the same. Then I retired 12 years ago and started writing the book at every spare moment I had. It's got pictures in it. And
it has. It's actually... It's got some lovely pictures of...
our grandchildren.
Yes, oh, there you are.
Yeah.
All of that. But what is lovely about it is that obviously a lot of the... I'm trying to find something. Oh, look, wedding photos. And the important thing about this is... Oh, there's some half-clad girls there too, Frank.
Marilyn Monroe.
Parts of the city we live in. And... You know, I've been saying for a long time, our history as individuals is lost in one generation because although we can tell our kids our life story, they forget because it's not their life story.
The short reason why I did this is simply that I've done so many things which I've been a pretty private person really in my life, and I wanted this information to be passed down to my children. Yep. Even my daughters didn't know a lot of what's in here.
Exactly.
And the grandkids knew nothing.
That's what I mean.
And they've now been through it and done their bit, and they can keep a copy. I've done copies.
And the exams start next week.
Yeah, testing, exactly.
Now, what was I doing in the 1950s? Exactly. Well, so, Frank, tell us what were you doing? Because you were born in the 40s.
I was born in 1943.
I was avoiding saying that. The 40s would have been, you could have been anything.
I'm not shy about my age like some people are.
26.
I'm 75.
Okay.
And so I was born of European parents. My father was Hungarian.
Spell your surname.
Well, he spelt it Sebestjen.
Which sounds like...
Sebastyan.
Right.
That's how the Hungarians say it.
Yep.
Right.
But nobody in this country could ever say that then, or probably not now very well either.
But were you born here?
I was,
yes.
Born here.
Yeah.
And I had a beautiful upbringing with my mum and dad. Mum was a terrific person. Bit of a sad story because I was actually the second child in the marriage. And I had a brother who, when I was being carried by my mother, she was going down to Glenelg on a very hot day to have a dip in the sea. And my brother was with her. He was 4 years old. They got to the Morphettville tram stop, and little Johnny got away from Mum and was run over by the Glenelg tram and killed. And my mother was also partly run over by the tram. She spent the rest of her pregnancy in hospital with a leg up in the air and a lot of damage.
Yes.
But she never recovered from that, and I was treated... So I was protected in just about everything I did growing up. Mum just didn't want me to get hurt.
No, of course.
So that was the worst thing that happened. But after that, she was a terrific mother, and Dad was a good dad.
Did she recover then after that?
Never
Frank?
mentally.
Not really?
No, she didn't get over that.
But you can imagine that
losing a child
you know,
like that.
yeah, something like that happening. When you think about that, it's just awful.
Any circumstances of losing a child, but to actually be there and I would have imagined to feel guilt.
Oh, well, that, of course, yes.
Well, I'm sure she felt that all her life,
Yes,
and
I'm
she
sure
talked
she
about
did.
it a bit, and it just wasn't the best part of her life.
No.
So I went to Sacred Heart College after going to the Mornington Primary School. Do you know where Mornington is?
On the peninsula.
No, Mornington was actually a suburb on the Anzac Highway where the church is, and it's now Plympton.
Okay.
Oh.
So I went to the Mornington Primary School, Catholic school, then Sacred Heart College.
Oh, Plympton School, that's what it was.
Plympton. And Brayville, that was another suburb there, but that's not there anymore either.
Changed, yeah.
Brayville.
Yep.
Like, there was another suburb.
For those people living in the other states, that's very close to the main sort of heart of Adelaide, because Adelaide City is really only a square mile.
It was.
Yeah.
That's right.
And then all these suburbs sort of grew up around the city.
That's right.
Between the city and the sea, because we're so close to the ocean.
Yep.
Yeah. So, Frank, you actually became a musician. How did that happen?
Well, when I got to about...
Singer's a musician too, I guess.
13 or 14 years old, and I had a neighbour whose grandson was called Jeff Pretty, and he had a set of drumsticks.
Great name.
It was,
Jeff Pretty.
Jeff Pretty.
Jeff.
He had drumsticks, and he would come into our house where we had a radiogram, and we would listen to John Laws on the Big Beat Show. I don't know whether you remember that. That was a relayed program every 5 nights a week. And I would sing along with all the stuff that was being played, and Jeff would play the drumsticks. By the time we were both 16, he was so good as a drummer that he got a job immediately with a professional band at the Glenelg Town Hall called Alec, Chris and the Hi-Fis.
Okay.
I, at the same time, started a band off, and I had a few musos, and we started doing gigs around Adelaide, and it sort of grew from there. The band originally was called the Thunderbolts. Nobody's ever heard of them.
I have.
Have you?
I have, because I'm as old as you.
Okay. We became the Mac Men with Johnny Mac for about 5 minutes.
Yes.
And Johnny was an inspiration to me. He taught me lots of stuff about how to work a crowd. And
He's
anyway,
still working a crowd.
He is. He's
Absolutely
86 years old now.
Still performing.
Yep. After the Mac Men, we became the Insect, and that's when our career really shot through
Yes.
the roof.
Now, was that a Beatles influence, or were you pre-Beatles?
No, not really. I just thought it was a clever play on words.
Absolutely.
Because everybody thinks it's insect,
Yes.
but it's not insect, it's in-sect.
Sect.
And I just liked the name, and we then eventually, not long after, had an LP. We called it Insect A-Sides. Another clever play on words. But we were the first band, we had 2 hits in the top 40 at the time in 1965, and we were the first band to record a 12-inch LP. Do you know what an LP is?
Oh, well, I do, yes.
It's surprising how many people don't know what
They're
an
very
LP
good
is.
as coasters now if you've got a big cup.
So our
Was
band...
it Bakelite, though?
Bakelite, that's
Was
it.
it Bakelite?
That's it.
Yes, see, not vinyl.
No.
Before vinyl.
I was approached about 5 years ago by a record company in Toronto who wanted... I own the music rights for the Insect. They approached me whether I'd give them permission to release 2 tracks on a new vinyl single, because vinyl is very big again now.
Yes.
And we did that, and it's released. But
They'll all get over vinyl again because it takes up too much space, where a file now is not even there.
But the devotees claim that the sound is better from it.
Yes, well, look at our age. We're both struggling to hear anything. So.
Anyway, at the time, the Insect became a big band because we got a job.
It was, you were
full-time,
huge.
professional musicians at the Ark of a Hotel.
Yep.
And we were there 6 nights a week, plus Saturday afternoon. The 6 nights were a dinner dance.
Yeah.
And we did a choreographed floor show.
Yes.
Our keyboard player was...
You were probably the first of that sort of show band group.
We were a real show band.
Yeah.
Nobody could do what we were doing.
No.
We were doing Guys and Dolls floor shows, My Fair Lady, and people couldn't believe that a rock band could do that.
Was Greg Hart with you then?
No, that came much later.
Okay.
That was in the 70s.
Because Greg's been on this program too.
He's a wonderful guy and a world talent.
But maybe the influence of that is what influenced him to do the same sort of thing.
Well, it inspired him. I proudly say that he does. And I mean, when he joined our band, he was a very shy young fellow.
Yeah.
But he came out after that. He did a lot of other work to bring it out. But I think I was a bit of his inspiration at first.
Oh, excellent.
Which was nice.
Yeah. Now, you didn't stay with the music industry, though, did you? Well, you sort of did and you sort of didn't.
Well, before that, I was actually at Myer Record Bar, managing the record bar.
Oh, that's right, yes.
And that was a short career of 7 or 8 months only. But I loved that because I'd never done retail before. And it was an exciting time because while I was there, the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper was released. And that became a huge album, and I was involved in the promotion and selling of that.
Yeah.
And that was a terrific time. Just prior to that, though, my day job was working for a jukebox company.
Right.
And that was a terrific job because I would go around and I would purchase the records to put on the jukeboxes every fortnight. They all had new singles. And then I'd go around on a Lambretta scooter. In those days, that was the company vehicle. And I would put the records on, collect the money from the cash box and stick it in the side bin of the motorbike and take it back to the office.
Isn't that amazing?
But I learned...
Well, that obviously, that though must have led to the next part of your life story, and we'll be back in a tick to tell you what that is. Our special guest is...
Frank Sebastyan.
Thank you.
Now, Frank, the band, the Insect Band, actually has played on for...
55 years.
55 years, that's amazing. But like most young musos, and I guess most people in show business, you basically have to have a second job to survive if you're trying to work professionally within the industry. Because there's good times and there's bad times.
Sure.
But because you were buzzing around feeding those machines with records, that really led you to another career path, didn't it?
It did. Well, two things. I also got a job with 5DN at around about that time. I became the music director there.
Yeah.
And that was a job I dearly loved. I'm one of the lucky people in the world. Everything I've touched as far as employment is concerned, I've been paid for having a good time. Truly I have.
That's fantastic.
Absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
So working at DN with people like Paul Linkson and Mel Cameron, he and I were like that. I used to go in the studio with Mel and we'd have a fag together. We'd smoke a cigarette in the studio. But everybody did it in those days, you see. That's how it was.
Yes.
That's how it was.
Then with the jukebox thing, that led to another industry which I was part of, the coin-operated industry. And in about 1977, 78, I decided to open a place called the Family Fun Factory, which in the old words, it was a pinball parlour.
Yep.
But we dressed it up beautifully with furniture and carpets and strict rules and regulations, dress code. And if you weren't meeting those dress rules, you weren't allowed in. We had a series of these around Adelaide and they all went very, very well, very successfully, so that they became the market tester really for a place which you'll know, I'm sure, called Downtown Leisure Centre.
I think everybody who is, how old? You'd have to be past, what, 40?
I think so.
Yeah, past 40. So it was it was in a venue that was originally built as a cinema. And when the cinemas sort of died off, wasn't it?
No, that's not right, no.
No? Okay.
Originally, the building that Downtown was in was a furniture emporium called McCro's.
Oh, okay.
McCrow Brothers.
Right.
Sorry, Haynes Hunkin.
Haynes
Hunkins.
Okay, there's a name from the past.
Haynes Hunkins. Yes. What happened, my architect of the day, Peter Milne, he and I, we were looking for a place in Rundle Street because that was
Still
the centre of the city.
Yep. Still, yeah.
But there were no vacancies there, all tenanted out. So we ended up going into Hindley Street and we knocked on the door pretty well of Haynes Hunkins and said, you know, what's happening here? Is there much future in the business? It turns out they were ready to close the shop anyway.
Right.
So we negotiated with them, with another partner company at the time, and Downtown came from that. from the time we took over the premises to the time we opened at Christmas of '79, it was about 5 months. It was a major renovation.
Yes, it would be.
In the end, we had a huge skating rink, which was the centre of attraction there.
Yeah.
There was a Dodgem car rink.
Was a roller rink,
skate,
rink, yep.
And that was hugely successful.
Yep.
We used to run midnight skates on long weekends. And those midnight skates, we crammed in like 1,000 kids.
Wow.
And the parents would drop them off out the front. It was called a lock-in.
Oh.
Because once they got in, we wouldn't let anybody out until 6 in the morning when the parents would come back and collect them. That's how trusted we were
Yes, to look
with
after
the community.
them.
Oh yeah, that was a serious part of our success story, the fact that we had such a strict...
And what years was that?
79.
Yeah.
And eventually, the honeymoon of 65, that was 65 Hindley Street. Mm-hmm. The honeymoon was over and the takings went down quite a bit eventually, and we downsized it and shifted to an old picture theatre.
So that's my story, yes.
And that was called the State.
The State
Theatre.
It was just really a four-wall theatre, wasn't it?
It was.
It wasn't anything fancy.
We lost the roller skating rink, and it was okay, but it was never the same and not as exciting as the original downtown was.
Yeah.
But that was a terrific place.
Because it
for
was
Adelaide.
downtown, that was the whole point. It was downtown.
It was downtown, exactly. And I was the first person, in Australia at least, to obtain the musical rights to use a commercial record at the time, which was the original Petula Clark version of Downtown. Nobody had done that. The record companies were always very protective of their product and wouldn't let anybody use it. But I think partly because of my knowledge of the industry and connections, I was able to negotiate that we got the rights.
It's a history thing, isn't it? It's the fact that you've been around even then for such a long time and respected.
Exactly, yeah.
Frank, maybe you should release this as a book.
Well,
a genuine book.
When I first thought of the idea, I was going to do that, but being a pensioner, when I was quoted the price of doing this, 100 or 200 copies or something, we just couldn't afford to do it. I ended up with about 15 copies, one for the children, and we got a couple of spares as well. But I don't know whether it's of that much interest to people.
Look, I think
might be.
Genuinely, it's history. We know about some of our history in this country, but we don't know a lot of our modern history. Since the advent of the internet, obviously that's changed things, like with Wikipedia and so on, because these things can be on those platforms, but books are still books.
Yes, that's correct.
And books are something you can just pick off the shelf at home and have a look at. You don't need electricity, you don't need to do anything else. The book is there and it's tactile and you can read and put it down and come back to it, sort of thing. Well, you can do that, I guess, with a screen, but it's not quite the same as a book.
No, I prefer always to have a book than actually picking up a computer.
So, Frank, you've just recently had a change of direction again.
Indeed.
Is it the smile? Is it the locks? Is it the fact that you haven't got too much in front of your belly here? What is it that's driven you to be a male model?
Well, what happened when I retired, my wife of 56 years in 1st of June this year.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
You still together?
We are, same one. Anyway, when I retired, she was terrified that I was going to be impossible to live with without the fullness of the business and the life that I had. Because I loved working, I really did. I was up early and home late. And anyway, she was terrified.
That's why your marriage lasted.
Yeah, maybe it was. Anyway, when I retired, she, unbeknownst to me, she rang Tanya Powell.
Yes.
Tanya Powell.
We've had Tanya Powell on here.
Have you had her on?
Yeah, we have.
She's one of the most beautiful women in the world.
She's lovely.
She's gorgeous.
She's a lovely person.
Gorgeous on both sides.
Absolutely, yeah. Anyway, Christine rang Tanya and said, look, I've got a husband you might be interested in. So I went in for an interview and she snapped me up and I started doing catwalk and photographic, and I loved the modelling stuff on a catwalk.
You're good with the 3-point turns,
well, I was used
Frank.
to it on stage.
Of course.
And I just took to it like a duck to water.
Yeah.
And the clients that she booked me for, they seemed to love what I was doing, and it all worked so well.
It's amazing, isn't it, how in your life, I don't know if you found this, it's we can have many different careers, but at the base of it all is show business.
It is. And
communication, really. It's communication, I guess, more than anything.
Correct. One of the things that I'm a little bit proud about too, recently we did some research on Google and the Guinness Book of Records to discover that I am the oldest working male model in the world.
Oh, good heavens.
There are plenty of women who are older than me still working.
Yes.
But we couldn't find anybody, a male, who's older than what I am.
There was somebody prior to this, though, wasn't there? There was somebody prior to you who's gone now.
I don't know about that. The only one I knew about at the time was a Japanese fellow.
Yeah, a Japanese guy.
But he wasn't really a model. He was a dancer, a rock performer.
Right.
And he had another career.
Yep.
And at that time, he just did a modelling stint, 1 gig or something.
Oh, right.
So it really doesn't qualify like I really did.
You actually do it.
And you are still, Frank?
Well, I don't get a lot of work. The trouble is, the industry is such that they direct all of their marketing and promotion to young people.
Sure.
So when you're 75, Tanya was great. She really made work for me.
Yeah.
Well, we still buy clothes. Men still buy clothes.
See, this is a pet thing of mine. I think if the retail industry marketed their clothing towards older people with stuff that we can wear, they would sell a lot more of it. Everything's aimed at younger people, you know, jeans, T-shirts, that sort of thing.
Yeah. And skinny cut clothing when most of us have put weight on.
I can't put a skinny fit on, it won't fit me.
I could put 2 on if they were sewn together. I'm sure I could.
Yeah.
It's an amazing life, Frank.
It's very...
We'll keep chatting and we'll be back in a minute with more about this amazing gentleman.
We're reminiscing here.
We certainly are. With name dropping, Frank's name dropping.
I know.
Tell us some of the famous people that you've worked with, got to know over the years and so on because of what you've done.
Okay, with the band, there are 2 people in particular that I have to mention. The first one's the late and great Glenn Campbell.
Yes.
We did a gig at the Findon Hotel one night, and he happened to be playing at the...
Entertainment Centre? Or
one
of those places, doesn't matter.
He did a concert here in Adelaide on the same night we were playing for his record company, EMI.
Oh, right, okay.
And the record company invited him to come after his gig. But we didn't really expect he would come, but he did. He turned up and he eventually got on the stage with us, and his musos mixed with mine. We did an hour gig in front of 500 people who were gobsmacked. They couldn't believe this was happening,
no,
you know.
I bet.
No photos. Big. Nobody had cameras in those days.
I had
no evidence
phones.
of this.
No one had mobile phones.
No. The other fellow was Johnny O'Keefe, who was always my idol. He was Australia's king. And I met him when I was 16 in the jukebox business. That's another story. But the second time I met him, he did a performance at Fiesta Villa at the Findon Hotel.
Yes.
And we had to back him that day too, shortly after he died. But they were 2 people that I really had a lot of...
Cliff Richard, what was the connection with Cliff Richard?
Cliff Richard?
Yeah.
He used to visit me at 5DM when I was the music director.
Right.
We became friendly to each other. And I often see him when he comes to Adelaide, even at the market, we go and have a coffee. Once we were in London, Christine and I, in Oxford Street, in one of the boutiques, and we're looking around, and in through the door comes Cliff and a couple of minders. I said to Christine, "That's Cliff Richard." She said, "Yeah."
Yeah.
I said, "Come on, we'll just go over and say hello." She's really shy like that. She wouldn't do it. So I went over and reintroduced myself, and he knew me straight away, and we talked for 25 minutes.
Yeah.
The 2 minders converged around him. They didn't know me, and they were trying to keep me away, but
thinking it
he was
just
okay.
A stalker.
I love that. Frank, this book that you wrote, I think, you know, the publishing is difficult. Why don't you put it online? Then other people could share what is really a fascinating life story.
That's an interesting concept.
I
hadn't thought of that.
Speak to Malcolm later.
Full of it, full of it. Yeah. And speaking of that, our time is now full, completely.
Yes, it's been a joy.
What a pleasure it's been to talk with you, Frank.
Absolute joy.
Janice, Malcolm, thank you very much for having me.
An absolute pleasure. Good
Thoroughly
luck for the
enjoyed your
future.
company. Thank you very much.
And we've enjoyed your company too, so don't forget to tune in next time.
Next
Do you like
time?
that?
I did.
Go on, do it. Say it.
Next time on our time.
Until then, keep yourself nice, and we'll see you then. Bye.
Come on into downtown and let the good times roll. Great skating, great music, good food and fun.
It's the greatest skating town.